Okay, I'll call this Plan Commission meeting for January 14th, 2019 to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Susan Springman. Joe Zitzelberger.
Here.
Brad Zeman.
Here.
Brian Malish.
Here.
Tim Black.
Present.
Chris Thomas.
Okay, first item we have is minutes. Is there anybody who'd like anything pulled or changed on them, or look for a motion? Motion to approve. Motion by Brad Zeman, second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Called question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment, is there anyone here who'd like to address the question on anything that's not on the agenda for this evening?
Haley Mendowski, 103 West 3rd Street. I would like to commend Nyla Fry for moving forward with the EMS monument. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to new business. The first item we had was public hearing and discussion action on general development plan and certified survey map for Kilkenny Farms West, located at the southwest corner of Woodland Drive and County Highway Q. Kevin, that's been pulled for this evening?
It's been, yes, it's been postponed to another meeting, and which will also include a new public hearing.
Okay. We don't have to take any actions on that or anything, do we?
No.
Okay, tabling it or anything? Okay. Number two, we've got public hearing and discussion action on preliminary plat, general development plan, and specific implementation plan for K North, addition to West Bridge located north of Cup Road, adjacent to the existing West Bridge plat.
We're not gonna be asking the Plan Commission to take action tonight. There are a couple items that we'd like to get some direction from the Plan Commission, and then it'd also give the developer time to finalize some details that staff has just raised some issues with, and I think it'll give them some chance to provide some better detail on what some of the things that we question. So I think Don is gonna start with the introduction, and then it's gonna be up next, Matt.
Yes. Can you just stand right here and do it? I
Sure
guess?
can.
Yeah, that's good. When we purchased the property from Mrs. Kipley, there was a plan that was condominiums. And what we've done is we've taken a look at this because you take the double stack Roger Nancy cul-de-sac in the back. It worked out really good. We did a lot of test drills. That's got to be jacked way up in the air. Basically, what we're doing, then I met with the county executive, and there's a huge movement a couple of years ago. What do they call that, Muck?
Phosphorus removal, I don't know.
Yeah, legacy phosphorus.
Legacy phosphorus, where they take these streams, and I'm no expert at it, but I got a hold of Matt from Verbiker. That's kind of what they specialize in, and Matt will talk about that part of it. And the farmers have done a lot. Matter of fact, there was a little issue. I got called one day here, and they said, we're gonna block the ditch. There was a manure spill. There was a full line of the big wagons, and they sucked that thing out. They did a marvelous job in an emergency. So a lot of times when technology is getting better, there's a few ruffles in the road. But going back to what the county is doing, there's a lot of phosphorus in these old stream beds. They're doing it in Dorn Creek. So working with Verbique, with Matt, we're looking at a total meandering stream. It's a gravel base, most of it, going around the outside, and not putting a lot of lots in there. We've got a double pair of cul-de-sacs. You jack them way up. They're actually above the ground. And basically then, we're putting in a couple of, they're little kind of ponds. I call them lakes, but let's call them ponds. And they're, after the water's treated, they're not stormwater ponds. And again, Matt, you can address this. And what's really interesting, if you took a compass and you put the needle of the compass, Dan, could you point on the map where Welcome is? That's the corner of the beautiful, I think it's about a 12-acre park we've got in Westbridge. So if you looked at, if we had a map of the whole thing, this is very close to that. So what we're looking at now is connecting those two cul-de-sacs. Travis Larson, that's the one on the west, and there'll be a walkway through there. Dan, do you have a green version?
Yeah, did you get?
I got some pictures, and that was it.
Oh, there was another version. Well, I have it here, but.
Okay, You can bring it up when we're done here, Dan,
Okay.
that's cool. So there's a big area to the west of Roger, that's the cul-de-sac
I got one email.
that's going to the west, Nancy's to the right, and there's a pond there, and that's why we're not gonna call this K North anymore. This is the Golden Pond addition to Westbridge. We went way out of whack, and we put a super park in Westbridge, zip line, we're gonna do another one this summer with the beer garden. But what we realize is, I'm talking to Dan, and Dan will address this, we need a place where kids can go fishing. We need a place where there's some trails going around, and that's where those cul-de-sacs will cycle. In other words, when you're a kid, you can go anywhere. You got it.
Dan, we think we got it.
I got the email, I'm just waiting for it to load here.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
So, with that said, there you go. Okay, cool. You see the one on the left, that's Travis Larson cul-de-sac? The trail would go from there to Roger, that's the one up in the northwest corner. Those two, the big blue ones, those are actually ponds, nothing to do with stormwater. And it's funny because when we did the one by the Arboretum Office Park, we have videos with these little bluegills. And they actually come out of the stormwater ponds, and then they go by Arboretum Drive, but there's no pond there. So the game's over for them. And what we got here is, as those little fish are hatched, we can run a system where they can go into those ponds, and that way, people from Meadowbrook, people from the village, kids from all over can actually go do a little fishing. So, Matt, you want to talk a little bit about the phosphorus?
Yeah, so basically what we're looking at doing, instead of maintaining these existing farmland ditches that run kind of east-west through the property, what we're looking to do is lengthen the stream. And to do that, we're gonna run it up along the north property line and then bring it down to Copper Road at the southeast corner of the plat. By lengthening the stream, it helps provide a lot of positive environmental benefits for the site. It's going to increase the amount of wetlands on the site. The wetlands on the site right now will be doubled by the time we're done with this stream relocation. Relocating the stream and making it longer also helps to reduce the grade on the stream, so the water's gonna move through that stream slower. It helps reduce the amount of erosion that could happen along the stream. And as Don mentioned, the biggest impact environmentally that we're gonna see is the phosphorus reduction. So right now, there are about 6,000 feet of existing farmland ditches out here. CARP-C and Dane County have released information through their Suck the Muck program about how much phosphorus they think exists per foot in those streams. We estimate there could be 20 to 30,000 pounds of phosphorus currently in that legacy sediment in these existing ditches. And we're going to cap essentially 6,000 feet of existing ditch. The new stream will be relocated outside of those existing ditches. So we're essentially taking 20 to 30,000 pounds of phosphorus offline. If Dane County were to do that as part of their Suck the Muck program, like they're doing right now in Dorn Creek, I mean, that effort alone could be a $500,000 project. So we think this relocation is gonna help, really enhance water quality on the site, as well as, provide additional wildlife habitat, for the site area.
I was just gonna talk a little bit too on, what we've got in our dark green areas is what we're gonna be calling park areas that we're looking to put the ponds into the park just for recreational. And the small outlot here is kind of like a pocket park, just a small place that, a swing set, something where the local moms that don't want the kids to go across to Westbridge to the big park, so that there is at least a place to go to, that Don can do his magic with his parks. What we're looking at is in the park area with the ponds is to try to do some fishing things, some possibly even maybe a handicap fishing pier that we could go out, something like that. Also the trail network, we're thinking about doing grass with maybe some, take some of the spoils that, some of the dirt that we've dug out and maybe make some you know, some hills, give it some character to the area that's down in there, just kind of, you know, just some fun things. Tracy, you have some of those other pictures that we can go to?
I do.
We found some fun pictures that we just kind of want to talk over some of the features. You know, we're looking at possibly just having a kid's pond, you know, a place where they can go and catch fish, just have a good time. You know, that place. This picture here, can we keep that one, Tracy? We're looking at creating nice banks, you know, something that is really nice and safe, you know, but a place that is welcoming, you know, and open grass, you know, things like that. So that's where we're looking for, a place that, you know, I don't know if we're gonna have to put an aerator in it or something, but, you know, something that'll keep the fish in, but also a place for, you know, in the summertime, when you see the kids with their fishing rods, you know, on their bikes, they'll be able to go to a nice, safe place, and that's what we're looking for. You know, something to enhance this area. Okay, Tracy, more. So just some ideas of the pond. You know, and I always get a kick out of looking at, you know, Dad with the young fish, and I think all of us can think of that first time that we all went fishing, that Dad distracts you and all of a sudden takes that fish and throws it on your hook and throws it back into the lake, and that's what the first fish that you catch. It's really about memories. You know, that's what we're trying to create here, is a nice spot, nice safe neighborhood that we can create some memories. And it sure doesn't help if they can catch some. So we can keep some fish in the ponds, you know, through our kind of creative ways. You know, that's what we're looking for, is looking for the smiles. Is that all of them? Okay. Also, I thought I had a couple more that show bikes.
Nope.
Okay, nothing showed up on those? Okay. On the, I had a couple others which showed young kids like this doing mountain biking on this area. One of the things that there's local mountain biking clubs that are actually looking for courses, and it doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be long, but it has for something like a nice course with grass and whatever. And that's another way to use this park. You know, that's what we're looking for, is, you know, and that's what, I had some pictures, but they must have not came over. Okay. So, a couple of ideas on the park.
Chris, I have a summary of staff comments, but I think that those are probably better off waiting until after the public hearing.
Okay. All right, so I'll open up the public hearing then. We have Nyla Fry, 404 East Verleen. She has questions.
Okay, I love the concept of having a nice place for kids to go to be able to fish and maybe throw some stones or whatever. But I do have a question. I'm not familiar with Westbridge Park, so you can fill me in. How much parking is there, and how accessible are these trails going to be? You know, this sounds like a great idea, but I'm wondering about, you know, a family who has a handicapped child. Are they going to be able to utilize this? You know, what kind of path do you see? I just would like the information
No,
on
it's
that.
it's a good question, Nyla. First of all, for parking, if you look at the reason we put the big park in Westbridge, right where the green is, if you took a compass, this is actually closer. In other words, Westbridge is twice as deep. So this is very close. So the other thing we did was put a lot of parking stalls. If you go into Westbridge Park, we put a lot of parking stalls in there. We overkilled it for that reason. The other thing we do when we build parking stalls, the industry, a lot of times 18, 20, 22 feet. Most of the time, we'll try to get a parking stall 27 feet deep, meaning you can pull in with an SUV, you can open the back up, you can get your Nesco roaster if there's a graduation party or something. And the other reason we make deep parking stalls, and we have 2 stacks of them right across the street, is if you're in a vehicle and you want to back out in the street, you can almost get full view before you're on the street. That's the advantage of these real deep parking stalls. So to answer that, if you're from some other part of town, you can come in, just like people do now in the Westbridge Park, park in all those parking stalls, walk across the street. I'd like to see a four-way stop sign, but I'm starting to see those blinky, what do you call those blinker deals that you're putting, like the ones you just put out in Peaceful Valley?
RRFB, what does that mean, Tracy?
Rapid repeating, flashing, blinker, something. I don't know.
You know, they actually seem to be working pretty good. So, you know, whether it's a four-way stop or the blinker deals, you know, something where, and that's why we need the little vest pocket park up there for little kids that are, you know, 0 to, I have a granddaughter and there was a little baby that wasn't quite 1, and she says, that's Gigi. She's a grandma, that baby's 0. He says, no, what do you mean? She says, until you're 1, you're 0. So when you get little infants that are 0 to maybe 5, that's really nice to have a little vest pocket park, so they don't have to go across the, you know, deal. So, but anyway, that's, as far as those are good flat parking stalls. Dan, as far as the grade, you know, I don't know, I mean, we're not gonna have, it's not gonna be flat, they're gonna be, you know.
We want to give it some character.
Yeah.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Thank you, Don. Any other,
Can I ask a
we
question?
gotta have name and address, please.
Lynn Braun, 6316 Hellenbrand Road. So I live right next to Westbridge Park. Eventually, it'll be to my backyard. I just have a question for you about, I love the trails, the ponds, great idea. If you're thinking of putting in a handicap accessible ramp, et cetera, for fishing, that's awesome. Are you gonna make part of the trails then paved and accessible to folks with wheelchairs and disabilities and strollers? Because that's gonna make sense if you're gonna do something like that. And if you want some of them to be trails for more mountain biking, more dirt kind of trails or something, that's fine. I just want to put that in your ears so that you take it into consideration. I'm a physical therapist. I work with folks with disabilities. I have a daughter with a disability. So when we travel, it's very difficult to find trails and paths around ponds that are level and paved and accessible.
So what, maybe, what we, you know, what is it, Devil's Lake, when they got 2 different trails? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So during public hearing, we generally don't have question sessions, so I just,
Okay.
not that I'm trying to cut Don off, because I know you probably don't like to speak much. We'll say those, it's just, this is the comments that we want to hear, so
Right.
we've heard that's something that's important to you, so something that we would discuss outside. Anybody else that would like to address? Go ahead.
Anne Lewandowski, 103 West 3rd Street. I love all these concepts. I love the saving money on the suck the muck. I do wonder if this is going to be a location that is attractive to families with small children. The pond issue does raise concerns about liability for the village, and I would be very interested to know who's going to assume that liability for drownings, should they happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen Ziegler, 6278 Cop Road, so we're that square block on the corner of Cop Road and Welcome Boulevard. I think that's what it is. Does this mean that Cop Road will be paved and we won't be driving on crumbles in the future? Yes, please?
I gotta get permission from him.
The road is a disaster from the intersection on up. Is that gonna get fixed?
So once we're done with this section, we'll answer that question.
Okay,
Sound good?
and then one more comment.
Yep.
On the preliminary plat that I stopped in and picked up about 2 months ago before Christmas, you had my husband's name down as Alvin. His name is Alan. I didn't marry Alvin, I married Alan. So I don't know if it's been changed.
See that guy over there? Work that out with him. Sorry about that.
Good point.
Their surveyor, that needs to change.
Yeah, we'll take care. Okay.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Eileen Rip, I live at Rip Drive, but I have the farm just adjacent to the north of there, and we're concerned about a lot of homes coming in there because they're still gonna keep farming, and so they know they're gonna be aware of this very air that's spread around, and also all the water that comes down from those hills into that area. So it's one thing our guys are concerned about. Thank you.
It does flood. I've got pictures from like 95 where it's a mess. So water control is gonna have to be something big.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
As I go there, I live in Little Square. I am Alan, not Elvin. I'm just looking at you show the access from the cul-de-sac back there, but I'm not seeing any parking stalls for anything there. I mean, if Grandpa or Dad's gonna haul the kids and the equipment and stuff in, you're not gonna walk all the way from Westbridge Park all the way over there, and a lot of people are not, in a cul-de-sac, you're kind of limited on parking anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm gonna close the public hearing. Kevin, why don't we go with your comments first, and then we can address any questions that we just heard.
Let me try and walk you through some general comments that we've raised, and they're going to be addressing as they move forward. And let me just go through the list. It's probably 17 or 18 items. The first item is basements. We're concerned that basements are built above the normal groundwater, so we don't have sump pumps running on a continuous basis. Based on the preliminary plat that we've seen in some grading, we want to see some more details. It appears they're filling so that the basements will not be in the groundwater. So that's something we want to make sure that we get addressed, so we don't have basements in groundwater with sump pumps running on a regular basis. Number two is future development, and Tracy, if you could go to page 25. And page 25 is out of our sewer comprehensive plan, where not only do we plan for areas that are in our comp plan, but as engineers, we look farther ahead in terms of 50-plus years in terms of future development, so that we have utilities planned for the area even outside of the comp plan. And it's not shown real well on here, but this is the development right here on the screen. There's a green line on here that shows, and if it's in your packet, you can see it, that shows a possible sewer extension that would go north and west of this area. Tracy, if you go to the next page, and just back out just a little bit. Just to orientate you, this is the proposed development. Cop Road here is on the bottom. That green line I showed you was heading up in this direction. This area right here is marked by wetlands or flood areas. This is showing a high area. It's actually above 960, so it's in pretty steep slopes going up to it. So it's not an area that's going to be very likely developed. It's above what we can service with our typical water system. And then getting roads back here through this environmental corridor and through this wetland and floodway is also going to be difficult off of Cop Road. I don't think it's feasible that the village is going to grow in this direction, even though we have sewers planned for it. But I don't want to turn that off completely in case there's innovation in the next 25 to 50 years that would provide for some development in this area. So what I've asked the developer to do is think about how they can extend the sewer to the open space so that we're not closing the door. It may not be extended all the way to the edge of the plat, but it gets it to the open space so that if we ever have to, if this does develop there and it's in a sewer easement or it's in public land, that sewer could be extended. It might need to be provided by a lift station or some other means, but it certainly is leaving the door open, even though I don't think it's feasible that it's ever going to develop. something might happen in terms of ingenuity, that they come up with ways to cross the, the creek and other methods. So unless there's any objection to that, that's how we're gonna proceed at a staff level. Number 3 is parkland, and I think we've heard that raised a couple different times. We normally require these to go to the Parks Committee, and I know Don, have you talked to Sue? I think they're getting coordinated, so they can go to the Parks Committee and have a discussion about the trail system, about this pocket park, and how you're gonna connect them, and other issues. So I think we, generally at the Plan Commission, we will defer to the Parks Committee to refine what the parks dedication requirements are going to be. Number 4 is just a quick one. There's a farm access off of Cop Road. We want to see that go away. There's some additional sewer detail that we want to see. There's some street widths that I suggested. Make sure we meet what the fire department's has always been requiring, us 32 feet face to face from the curb. We are asking for, and it's not a stop signs at this point. We are asking for the RFBs at both of these intersections to really connect this neighborhood and this other neighborhood. Cop Road is not a high volume road, even though the speeds are rather high. I do think it's urbanized, and I do think the RFBs would be sufficient for those crossings. 8 was some setback requirements from Waunakee Utilities. Number 9 was raised, and I think that you'll hear it at the Parks Committee. There were some obligations that need to be met as part of the development of this park, and I suspect that the Parks Committee is gonna wanna see the timetable for making those improvements on that park across the street. Lot 73 and 74, I don't have, yeah, that's those 2 lots. Yeah, perfect. There's I want to make sure that there's a reasonable way of providing sewer to those, or water to those lots. I think we've talked about a couple different alternatives. And we also discussed access to those 2 lots. And then there's one additional lot on Cop Road. If you just scroll to the west, there, one more swipe. Oh, I'm sorry, all the way to the end. Keep going. There's lot 67, which would have direct access. Don and I talked about it today, and I think I think when we see the revised plat come in, that one's gonna be eliminated. And then on the other 2 lots, 73 and 75, we're gonna see a shared driveway or a shared view, something like we see on Tierney Drive and Southbridge, where there's a combined driveway with adequate space to be able to back up and turn around, so you're not backing into Cop Road. 11 was regarding some storm sewer and water laterals for the CSM, so that there's an existing home here. Maybe, connection is probably feasible in the future, so providing for that possible future connection. 13 was this trail connection between the cul-de-sacs of Travis, and those are actually shown on this updated map that wasn't in your packet. And here's a question that was asked. It's a requirement that all of as part of Phase 1, that Cop Road be fully improved to the edge of the plat. So meaning full reconstruct of the roadway all the way to the edge of the plat. And I'm obligated to bring it up. Our planner raised it as an issue. If you look back at the comp plan, this was actually shown as a circle or a horseshoe roadway, which would eliminate 2 cul-de-sacs, or depending on how they did it, it's possible to eliminate even more of the cul-de-sacs. I think the way at least in my opinion, the way they're setting this up and building up the cul-de-sacs and then having the drainage in the back, this is the more prudent way to develop this. Even though we do end up with cul-de-sacs on this, I just want to point it out. We're adding 4 cul-de-sacs, and our goal is always to reduce cul-de-sacs wherever feasible. In my opinion, I think these are feasible places to put the cul-de-sacs. And then let me just try and get to the other questions that were raised. Finished Cop Road, I think I've addressed that. Liability of ponds. The village has similar ponds like this all over the village, and the village certainly has liability insurance to cover any events that would happen at those ponds. Because there is, somebody said, a substantial amount of water, and it is substantial. It's thousands plus acres of, you know, I think it was, I don't have it in front of me, I might be misspoken here, but it was thousands of acreage that end up flowing through this area. And our stormwater engineers at Strand said, we really need to model this. We really need to have a good understanding of what the hydraulics of this development, and make sure that there's not flooding in these areas. And I have talked to Matt, and he's already been working on it. In fact, he's already got it completed. We just haven't reviewed it yet. So that the engineer who's designing it, and then our review engineers get comfortable with the passing of the 100-year flood, so that we're not passing floodways through somebody's house. And there was another question regarding access to parks. So I think that'll be addressed as part of the Parks Committee. We would generally rely on them for that issues. So with that, Chris, that's the summary of our comments. At this point, I think we're certainly getting comfortable at a staff level to recommend approval. You know, there was, I think I rattled off 20 different items. We'd like to get some more detail in terms to get that down to like a handful, so you're only conditionally approving with a handful of conditions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Brad, I'll start with you.
Being involved with the Clean Lakes Alliance and with the streams that are going through, it sounds like this is a real positive play, working with Parisi and the county and the waterways, and Verbecker doing their work to make sure that that works out. A lot of nice little amenities there. Sounds like they're addressing Cop Road, and for those residents on the end of it. I like the plan.
Tim?
Not any questions yet. No.
Brian?
I don't think I had any that weren't brought up as kind of already an issue or an area of concern. My biggest one was water table, water levels, both the volume of water and then just how low the site sits versus where I guess the ultimate grade will end up being when it's all said and done. So.
Chris?
I agree with Brian about the water issue, that it was raised already, and then parking as well, but that sounds like it's gonna be one of the Parks Committee that will handle that. I do like the concept of something different for a Waunakee Park. I could actually envision these ponds freezing over and being used for ice skating or hockey or something like that as well, so I think that'd be a really nice addition to Waunakee.
Okay, Joe?
Pretty much the same comments as everybody else. I do have two things that weren't really mentioned. One of them is the path that goes right along Cop Road and crosses on the east side of this over to the south side of the road. Where does that get extended, and does it cross back over to the north side of Cop again?
Yeah, the trails will be discussed at the Parks Committee level, but I would expect the trail connection to be made along here down to this intersection at, I guess that's Westbridge Trail, so that there's a safe crossing.
Okay.
You know, at least you can push the button and get across the street with having to, you know, rely on the stop sign that's at the railroad tracks.
And then would that continue on the south side?
You know, I haven't thought that through. If that's something you think would be important, we should probably comment on that. The Parks Committee may have an opinion on that. We will have I believe the trail connection is all the way on the other, along Cop Road on the south side down to the park. I don't know if it's necessary to have it on both sides, but you know,
Probably
it's something
not.
we can ask.
Yeah, as long as there's good crossing, it should be
Yeah.
fine. And then kind of in that same vein, I don't know if it's possible with the railroad there, but would it be possible to tie the Meadowbrook paths together with the path system up here?
Yeah, we certainly have, we discussed it at a staff level. Those crossings underneath a railroad get complicated
Yeah.
and expensive. And the railroad typically is not very cooperative in terms of having facilities underneath their facilities.
And crossing over would be prohibited.
agreed.
right?
Can't cross over. They'll
Okay.
never let cross over.
Okay.
But there are times when they do allow for some underpass, but I'm just concerned that I don't want to put people underneath the railroad tracks, because during any time of high rain
already
event,
underwater.
you're gonna be
Yeah.
underwater.
Yep.
And I don't know if I wanna direct kids or anybody else to an area that's gonna be underwater.
But, so the bike path that crosses the railroad though, down at COP, they wouldn't allow us to replicate that type of a pedestrian at grade level crossing?
Not at grade, no. No, they're gonna say you have a crossing. The crossing's at Cop Road, and you have a trail crossing there, and
So why not
if you
have
wanna go to
one?
the park, you need to go around. I mean, that's, I may not agree with them, but that's what the railroad's gonna say.
Given
And I've been
that,
reminded many times that the railroad was there first, not the roads.
given that, would there be any chance of tying that path along the railroad side?
Along the creek.
Yeah.
You know, once you're across the railroad track, you're into the park. So it's not that. So once you get onto this side of the
Yeah.
railroad tracks, access is great. I mean, it's not shown real well there, but the roadway and which is a super low volume road, is accessible off of that driveway.
Joe, are you asking on the west side?
On the west, yeah.
He's on the
say-
west side,
On
Kevin.
the west side, could we extend the path down?
I'm not following.
Along the railroad
Along-
track, basically
In a
running
trail
down to the
along
other.
Yeah, right along there,
Yes.
yep.
Loop the whole development, almost. I just think it's gonna be so low down there. That'd
Yeah,
be-
it's kind of low down there, but
that'd be my only-
I
it
think
drops
it's-
off from the railroad tracks down to a creek, well, no.
Might not be a level surface.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just,
I'll ask that question. I don't know if it's feasible or not.
you can put this comment in, Roberta, if you want. I'll say that we really like our railroad people, and we want to work with them always on having a good and established working relationship. Not that they're hard to deal with. Okay? Couple of things I had. The pond's depths, do we know what the pond's depths are gonna be at this point?
We're looking at the two northern ponds being 15 feet deep in the center.
Okay?
They'll need to be at least 12 feet deep, and that's just to maintain fish stock where it is.
Is that similar to what's in RIP right now, depth-wise?
No.
When that's full?
No, that's substantially deeper.
Okay. All right. My concerns, did Public Works plows make any comments in regards to the setup and how they'd be able to handle snow? Not that we're having great amounts this year, but in the future, if we have heavy snow, how are they gonna get the snow out of there? Are they gonna have to remove everything?
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to treat these like many other cul-de-sacs in the village. That's why we try and avoid them wherever we can.
Because I view this as we're gonna have a lot of removal right here. I've got all of it almost.
A what?
All of it's gonna have to really be removed almost with what we have.
Typically, we will pile the snow in the middle, and we minimize what's in the middle of the cul-de-sacs now, and we store the snow in the cul-de-sacs, until it gets to a point where it becomes an obstruction, and then we do haul the snow out of the cul-de-sacs. And for what it's worth, one of our haul spots is right over here, over in this park, is one of the places where we haul the snow to.
Okay, so then the other question I had was the roundabout that's off West Bridge, that curls. Is that gonna be a difficult task for us?
Roundabout?
Not roundabout, cul-de-sac, sorry. That cul-de-sac off West Bridge. The way that it curls there.
No, that's typical design. It meets our design standards.
Okay, then Travis Larson, I'm wondering why we have a crooked road as opposed to a straight line road?
I don't know why, but it will not, in terms of plowing, it will not cause problems. I mean, that's not, while it looks crooked on here, when you drive it, it probably won't feel crooked.
Okay, is there a reason we're doing that? I'm assuming?
Probably has
Don,
to.
can you answer that one for me?
Why are you wiggling,
Larson,
Travis?
why are we Travis Larsoning like this?
Why is it all wiggly and not straight?
When we can that one lot out of there, we can probably straighten it out quite a bit.
Okay,
Chris, while
good
I'm,
answer.
while I'm talking, can I throw something in on these ponds?
Sure.
The people who do our dirt work, they're from the Stoughton area. And it's been a number of years ago, there was a small child drowned in a pond. And the regulators, about 10, 15 years ago, they made us do benches. In other words, you'd go like this, and then it would drop 2.5 feet. You go in and it drops straight down. And they said, we have to do it that way. And after that child drowned, they realize that it's crazy. So they let it be a continuous, taper it down. So if you're walking into the water, you don't just like that drop 2 feet. It's a constant grade. So you know what I mean. So that's a huge thing that happened in the regulatory process.
Okay. Fire, no issues with this design? I did hear Mrs. Rip loud and clear about the water runoff. I want to make sure we're good with that. If it's coming at high velocity down towards that area,
Water comes down through there.
yeah, from the height that it's coming from, we need to make sure we're addressing that. And then, I don't see any parking for anywhere here on, for this, at this point. Is there a way we can address that somewhere up in here?
Something we can sure work on. It's a good it's a good comment. We'll go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, just a suggestion, maybe there's a way of widening this section of roadway between these two to allow some on-street parking, we gotta increase the length. And there's not a lot of, there might not even be any driveways if it's proper, that you're not blocking any driveways, you might be able to pick up a lot of parking.
I love your paths. I think that it's great. Kids will be able to bike in there. I think that's a great concept. Where will they keep their bikes when they go in there, if they go to fish? I just remember when I used to go fishing with my bike, my bike was generally not in a good zone. So I'm wondering if there's anywhere we can insert that. As we talk in the Parks Committee, we should talk about that. So, all right, I think that was everything I had. Yep. Okay, so tonight, we're not making any.
Not taking any
anything.
action.
What do you need for direction?
Are you comfortable with my explanation on the future development? And are you comfortable with the roadway circulation in the cul-de-sac as proposed? And then are you comfortable with the referral to the Parks Committee? And lastly, are you comfortable with what we've talked about in terms of access off of Cop Road for those 3 lots? There now would be 2 lots. And if you're comfortable with those, I think I got clear direction. But if you're not comfortable with those 4 things, then we should have more discussion on them.
Anybody? Anybody not comfortable at this point? The only thing I'm uncomfortable with is the cul-de-sacs, and I really want Bill to kind of weigh in, and did he weigh in on this when he saw it, or has he seen this?
He's seen it, but I don't know if he was occupied. What?
I texted him, he said he wasn't
Was he
concerned.
at tech staff?
Mhm.
Oh, he was at tech staff.
And he was not concerned?
He didn't voice any concerns, no.
They prefer not to have them. I mean, that's the bottom line, but sometimes he understands that they're necessary.
Otherwise, I like the layout. I think it sits well. So. Comfortable for staff to get? Yes?
For sure.
Okay. You've got your direction. All right, last thing we have is discuss and take action on proposed monument sign for Waunakee EMS building. Kevin?
We have a proposal to put a monument sign at the EMS building, which is pretty exciting. Nyla Fry's been taking the lead on it.
No, my husband has.
Okay, Nyla's husband's been taking the lead on it. We, at the staff level, have reviewed it, really just me. So I wanted to make sure that there was not any sight lines blocked, and I didn't see anything that would be be an obstruction. And I thought the height of it, the 54 inches, was 66 at the top and 54 at the bottom. It was reasonable, and we have a similar monument sign over at the fire department, and I fully support what they're trying to accomplish here, and would recommend approval.
Kevin, can I make one comment? A question that I thought the planning commission may have is about the flag poles. They're going to remove the flag poles that are on the end of the building, so they're existing, and they were donated by the George Kolb family, and they will be put behind the monument. So they're the same flag poles that are currently there.
So Ann asked to speak.
No, I already made my comment.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, motion to approve.
I think
Motion
it's
to
great.
approve
Was that
the
Brad or-
proposed monument sign for Waunakee EMS building.
Okay, motion by Brad Zeman, second by
Second.
Black. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Then we've got Waunakee Westport joint plan items,
Been canceled.
Canceled.
and they're canceled, so we are looking for one last motion. Second by Chris Thomas to adjourn, second by Joe Sitzelberger. Call the question, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everybody.